Well, welcome back to Takeaways as we are getting to look in the rearview mirror of Lynch with a Leader podcast and get to sit down and talk with Mike about the previous week's episode. And we get to kick off with Daniel Harkavy, and we are continuing this week after your interview with Ramsey personality George Kamel. Mike, if you had to describe your time with George in one word, what would it be?
It was challenging. I think George, man, George sees it, right? And I think it was incredibly challenging in the sense of I think George has a lot of clarity on the role that money can play in your life. And so it was challenging to me, and even in some areas that he and I may differ intellectually on, but man, his passion for it, you can't argue with it. It was
Mhm.
so good. It was challenging to me in a lot of ways.
When it comes to a topic like finances that can make a lot of people uncomfortable, right? Why do you think it's important to have leaders like George in the space that are so passionate about that topic?
Because money can make or break a life. Money can make or break a marriage. Money can make or break a person. Money can make or break a career. And money's funny, Casey, because money is this inanimate object that yields so much control over our lives. And we need people that live in that space of money, like George and Dave Ramsey and guys like that, and Dale Alexander, who we had on recently, who live in that space that go, hey, don't let this rule you. Don't let this be more than it was ever created to be.
So let's talk about this from a spiritual perspective because this is a spiritual leadership podcast. And what is it that you see working at a church in ministry for 30 plus years? What is the biggest struggle you see with people and their money?
I think they spend more than they make, which George talks about in the book, right?
Yep.
We spend more than we make. I think people think that when I get to this, I'll be happy.
Hmm.
And it's just not that way. When I own this, when I make this, when I accumulate this, whatever it is, it's going to make me happy. And it's not. And so I think there's this false view of what money can provide. And we say this all the time. You heard me say this 1,000 times, Casey. Money is neither good or bad. Money is not wrong. Making money is not wrong. Putting it at its proper place in our lives is what we've got to figure out. And the problem with life that I've seen over these years is money just gets in the wrong rung of the ladder.
Hmm. How have you seen leaders spend what we believe God has blessed them with? How have you seen them spend that well?
Well, I think the leaders that spend it the best, Casey, are the ones that remember where it came from.
Hmm.
So I think it's owner steward, right? I think the ones that understand that they're not the owner of their money, they're going to leave it. It's staying here. Those are the ones that struggle in life because these owners, these guys who own the money, they think they have to greed can set in. The guys that are stewards, the ones that live open handed and go, it's not mine, it's the Lord's. I'm just responsible for this time. And they tithe, they give, they don't let money get sticky on them. Those are the ones that get it. And I have met a lot of people who've accumulated a lot of money who just let it flow through their hands. And man, they use money to bless people. I've
Mhm.
met a lot of other people who make a lot of money who are greedy, and money almost ruins them because the chase of it and the grappling to hold on to it almost is all consuming for them.
Let's let's talk about maybe the leader that's listening right now that tuned into your episode with George and became convicted about the role that money plays in their life and it's affecting the way that they lead in their business, the way that they lead in their home. Where would you encourage them to turn first?
Well, I think getting a proper framework of what to do with what they've been given is huge.
Mm.
And I think that's why the Bible talks about giving. And we say this, if you go to NorthStar, you hear this. God doesn't need our money. I mean, he does not rely on what the piddly little gift that Mike Linch is going to give him. God gives us this recipe of giving so we're reminded of where it came from. And so I would challenge any leader to begin to give. If you go to a church and you're a spiritual leader and you go to a church, begin to give, begin to remind yourself this isn't yours. That's a starting place. A great book like this book by George, right? Breaking Free from Broke. Dale Alexander's book, The Talk. Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace. Getting those principles in place are great starting blocks for where we go in our future.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. And man, I thought that George again brought so much insight, passion, but relatability to a
Yeah.
topic that is hard for people to talk about, because George shared some of his own experience of being broke
Yep.
and being at a place where he was in an incredible amount of debt and how he overcame that. And I think that's one word that stuck out to me during this podcast was George's vulnerability to be willing to share how he got to this point. Why is it important that we're willing to share our stories?
I think it just helps other people with their story. We say a little phrase all the time: God never gets us through what we're going through, not to help someone else get through what they're going through. And I think when we're able to tell our stories, there's just a I can do that. You can do this. Man, I did. That's what I loved about George. Man, I was there. I was in credit card debt. This is where the most pivotal question for me in the episode was when I asked him, if you hadn't have done these things, what would you look like today?
Hmm.
And he's like, I would probably be living in a house I couldn't afford, paying a lot of car loans, not putting any money away, and basically surviving. And because he told his story, it helps somebody else go, man, if George can do it, I can do it. He wasn't some well known personality who Dave went and got. Dude, he was just working there. And it just, there's a, if George can do it, I can do it. I think there's just a power in our story because we give a face to a principle.
You haven't listened to this episode, I want to encourage you. Go back in your Spotify or your Apple playlist, jump back on YouTube, and sit down and carve out 40 minutes to watch this episode with George, because it could completely change your perspective on what finances look like in your life. Now, the train doesn't stop here. We're moving to a pivotal episode, aren't we? The big 200 number for your interview with Jordan Rayner. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what we can expect next Monday?
Casey, we couldn't have planned it any better for the 205th episode because I think Jordan sort of takes all 199 episodes and he wraps them in. He brings them in because he talks about the sacredness of secular work. The majority of people listening to this podcast today aren't in vocational ministry. They're not working at a church. They're working as engineers and architects and sales guys and ladies and people in business and people in real estate and people in government and people in athletics and all types of academic work. And I think there's a lot of times, Casey, it's really easy for us to go, well, that's secular work, but I'm in a sacred category. And Jordan blows that myth up, talking about the sacredness of secular work. And I think for a lot of people, it is going to unlock their faith Monday to Friday and Monday to Saturday. They are going to look at what they do totally differently than they did before. I'm telling you, it may be one of the most paradigm shaping episodes we've ever done. And The book is outstanding that he wrote, but Jordan's in that tech world, right? He's in the high tech world of all the stuff he's involved in the industry he's in. He lives it. He gets it. He's not me as a pastor writing about it. I think it's an episode that could truly change how we work the rest of our journeys.
And we don't want you to miss that episode. So if you haven't already, or if you have been tuning in to these 199 episodes that are that have led up to this moment, would you do us a favor and go and like and subscribe to the podcast in whatever platform that you watch or listen from? It is helpful for us, and hopefully helpful to the next leader that may find out about Lynch with a Leader. So if you're joining us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your content, thank you for being with us. We can't wait to see you on Monday as we get to sit down with Jordan Raynor. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again.